Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Curious Cutlets podcast with me, Anshika. We have two special guests today from the international higher education space. These are also my colleagues, and they've been kind enough to join me. We have with us Kshitij Bhatia, who is a travel freak working with a Chalchale NGO to provide basic education and skills in the rural blocks of Delhi. His only hobby and his favorite hobby, in fact, is to spend time with his friends. So, welcome, Kshitij, today. Another guest we have is Trisha Hegde. She is someone who started her own company at the age of 21. She's also a professional classical dancer and an amateur power lifter. Welcome, you both. Before getting to what you guys think about the topic, I'll just quickly, for our audience, explain what we're going to talk about today. Our topic, as you can see from the title, is age bias in corporate. All three of us happen to be in the same industry, which is the international higher education space, and we are pretty young in our roles as well. However, our experience ranges between 2, 3, or 4 years in the corporate sector. So today we're actually trying to understand what really is age bias. So questions around that, thoughts around what happens when young people join a corporate structure which already has older people, or what happens when young people join and old people are not able to upskill themselves. So before we start, in fact, I'd like to mention a few things. In March 2020, the Economic Times released an article saying that age-based bias is becoming more prominent in the workplace in India. In fact, 33% Indians feel that they have faced age-based bias at workplace. I wanted to know what you guys think about it. Have you faced it, or just what do you in your head means by when you say age-based bias?
Thanks for having me today. And for me, age-based bias is when you do have experience or you do have certain skill sets which are required for a particular job, but they still require a certain amount of like an age category where they need you to be certain above a certain age limit. And I think they sort of prefer to have people who are above a certain age rather than fresh new blood or skilled people who are actually are younger, more creative. I've actually faced this myself when I was a fresh graduate. I studied from Essex and then I came back. I never took any gap year, so I was 22 when I finished my masters. And when I decided to
Hmm.
look for a job, everybody wanted even for an entry level position, they were looking at certain age level, even though I was more than capable of doing that job because I had the skill sets. But they were looking for someone a bit more on the higher end of the age spectrum, which is quite prominent when you're looking at applying for jobs or when you're looking at
Yeah.
trying to even speak to you're not taken seriously sometimes because you're younger. So that sometimes is quite
Hmm.
annoying, as I might say.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
yeah, talking about this topic. Well, first of all, just, I would like to thank you for making me a part of this interesting, or I would rather say, a discussion on this ignored topic in this corporate world. Now, talking about the technical definition of ageism, in the corporate environment. So the stereotype we have nowadays, what we're talking about, it could lead to some serious consequences which we really don't understand. As a fresh graduate or as a person who is really passionate about learning new things and want to explore new dimensions. Such incidences in the corporate world could have some serious consequences, like we see the confidence level, the mental balance, attitude towards life, and
Yeah.
most importantly, our ability to lead a team. When we grow and we are on that stage, it really hampers that confidence and ability. So that's really important. And I think, like all other topics, now we have committees on various things in our corporate world nowadays. So it's really important to have a discussion on this point as well, so that we address this query on a serious note, and we understand that if we combine experience with passion, it would really lead, it would really end up, in a beneficial way for any organization, for any project. So we really need to understand that stuff.
If I might just add, I really like Shita's point about leading a team. You might see like in different scenarios where, for example, a same similar situation when a younger person is in it, or if an elder person is in it, they're both viewed at differently. So there are a lot of instances where if I'm handling a team, I'm like sort of handheld through the whole process, which is not really required, or someone's constantly looking to check if I have, made a mistake, or if I've, because, I'm younger. Sometimes that also triggers an unhealthy working environment where there's not
Yeah.
enough, there's a lack
Hmm.
of trust, or there's just a difference in the way someone treats you. That especially is a big factor, but it's also a matter of sometimes pay scale. You're doing the same amount of workload as someone who would have been in your position from a higher age group, but somehow you're paid less because of your age. That is a whole, that's a big part of why this is really wrong and why it still prevails, because it's cheaper to employ certain age groups, I'd say.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I actually resonate with what you guys say because a lot of research that I've done on this topic, a lot of that suggests that ageism is hidden. And when we talk about ageism, it's not only about young people feeling undervalued, because we are from the generation, we do feel that. And most of us have personally probably gone through instances like these. But also, ageism is actually talking about the other side as well. So when we have younger people and fresh blood coming in the corporates, it also talks about how the older generation who is fortunately or not fortunately upskill themselves, they end up suffering as well. So
Yeah.
which actually
Yeah.
leads me to the second question, which is basically from the Smart Recruiters blog I read, and it's by someone called Scott Wardle. And there's something he's written in this article which I'll read out to you, and then you can probably share your thoughts on this. So he says that the Valley, the median age of employees as titans such as Facebook and Google is under 30 years old. Facebook
Mm.
founder Mark Zuckerberg and venture capitalist Vinod Khosla say that young people are just smarter. People over 45 die in terms of new ideas. It's no wonder the demand for digital natives is leaving older workers at a disadvantage. But do you think that these big tech discriminations are only towards a particular age, or should we have to look at age for merit?
I don't
Yeah.
think like for especially for certain sectors, it's quite it's quite there established where certain age limits or age groups are required for them to be more creative. But again, we've had like our industry for that matter is such a sort of inclusive industry where we see different age groups participating and living and cohabitating together. It's not been an issue, but where that shouldn't be a mark. Your age shouldn't speak for you. And I think that is where when we are looking at a CV, it's very rare that you see someone's date of birth, because it's not required. It's not a mandate that I need to see your age. That is why a lot of people are quite surprised when I actually tell them my age. Because I'm currently in a team where both my colleagues, they're married, they have one of them has a kid, and they recently found out that I'm actually 24, and they were quite surprised because I was handling a very big profile. I never wanted to tell them actually, because they view me differently. So as long as they didn't know about my age, everything was fine. And all of a sudden, when they knew about my age, they started to like talk to me as if I was a bit, I was still under 18 or something like that. So that is one reason why I think age should never be a criteria. And it's both ways, not for someone younger who's applying for a bigger position, but also for someone who is on a higher age spectrum wanting to start something new. Like there's always people who suddenly realize that they might want to code, or they might want to do something on a trainee level, and I think it's absolutely fine for them to do that.
Well, I totally agree with Trisha. I mean, like it has nothing to do with your age. Now, what I personally feel is, I was reading few articles, and then the real problem, the problem is, even if you are 20 or if you are 50, the problem is when you refuse to readapt and learn. That's the real problem. Even if you are in your 20s or your 40s, in your 50s, if you don't want to readapt and learn, that's the real problem. That's where, when your organization or your teammates would have a negative image of yours. Just to give you an example, if you've graduated in 1995 from IIT, your knowledge would not be suitable for this tech environment in 2020 if you refuse to adapt new things. You have to learn every single day. You have to come up with some exciting and innovative ideas. If you don't do that, I don't think there's a place for any age group in this tech savvy world. So yeah, I think that's the real problem. You have to learn every single day.
That's absolutely, like, I couldn't have phrased it better. Like, that point in itself is what this all is about.
Yeah,
When younger people exclude older people out, or when older people baby the younger people, it's all about trying to sort of readapt and think about the mutual interest, the mutual goal. That's what we in my team as well currently, because we're all different age groups. We're trying to think of what is our end goal here. Like, I don't have to like you, I don't have to personally build a relationship with you, but professionally, I need to respect you. I need to, if a lot of my colleagues don't know a lot of the skills that I know, especially when it comes to a
exactly.
lot of designing work, a lot of new things that they're not aware of. So I take
Yeah,
this opportunity to actually teach them. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I teach this person another skill set, my workload is going to get less because they will be able to take it from my hand. So at the end of the day, they learn a new skill set, but I'm not dominating them into learning it. I'm actually making it a healthy environment for them to be
yeah,
able to learn a new skill set, and for them to be able to understand that even though I am younger, that doesn't mean that I'm gonna bully them, or I'm gonna be bullied into it. It's all about, I think, to readapt, to respect, and to make sure that there's a healthy and positive work environment, and age should never be a factor.
exactly. I mean, like that's what I feel. I mean, like, what's the harm in taking a healthy feedback and implementing it, irrespective of your industry? Even if, irrespective of any industry, take a healthy feedback, learn to take a healthy feedback and implement it. People fail to understand a very
Correct.
simple
Yeah.
funda, a very simple funda to make a project successful. Combine experience with passion, combine your knowledge with eagerness, and you can do wonders.
I always say a good manager, or there's a difference between a good manager and a good leader, a good mentor. And this is the sort
Yeah,
of opportunity that a lot of these people have, but they choose to give it up because they're on the defense. And they try to sort of, sabotage or make it a bit more difficult to actually have a good working environment. I wouldn't say everybody, but I think it's a good number of people who would directly go into defense mode, or directly want to, not trust their people because they're scared.
see, I
Yeah.
completely understand your point, and that's the reason I said, most of the people, in this corporate environment, they don't take a healthy feedback. They don't understand what a healthy
Correct. Yeah.
feedback means. So they don't understand this very basic point that, if I'm a 21-year-old, guy working in an industry, I can also have a feedback. I can also give you some thoughts about, this is not right. We can do it in a different manner. And there's a real problem. When you have 20 years of work experience, and you have this self-built ego, which doesn't allow you to take a feedback from a 21-year-old guy. So that's the problem. People need to learn that there's a term called healthy feedback, and they need to adapt it.
Yeah.
And that's how you run a company and you make a project successful. So that's very important.
That makes sense. There are a lot of important points from that conversation right there. There's a lot of talk about adaptability. Yes, we have to learn to adapt not only to changing environments, to people's thoughts and, dynamism in the market, whichever market that we are in. A lot of upskilling that we spoke about. So, not only making sure that you are upskilling yourself, but, making sure your team is also trying to learn new skills for and beyond work, and also trust. I personally feel trust is a major factor which lets a team float. So if we can trust our team, a lot of age bias can be negated. And my personal points to that would be that yes, in fact, I have also seen that a lot of interviews also have age bias. You will see a lot of things
Yeah.
happening in interview panel. I'm sure all of you must have experienced that people who are interviewing you there, or if you come across as someone young, just the way you behave, a lot of those interview protocols can really define you. And I think age bias really begins there. Another important
Yeah.
point is that, I feel like with young people, asking questions is deemed as not known. And last point in my case would be that I personally also feel young women face the brunt a lot more. And with due respect to all of sexes and gender, I just feel like with a young woman in a corporate, you already have a bias of proving yourself just like any other person. But you are also looked at in a certain way with regards to your clothes being judged, with your appearance being judged, and also your age, unfortunately, coming in a lot of times. I've been, and I'm sure most of our viewers have also been in situations wherein you're probably the only woman in the room, and you feel like layers of bias and discrimination pounding on you, because of which you can't be yourself. This actually leads
Yeah.
me to I really want to talk about is that a lot of millennials are thinking about how to become a thought leader. Now, this comes from a Forbes article written back in 2016. I understand we're all trying to focus on skills, but do you think that we cannot become a thought leader if we have not upskilled ourselves?
There's a certain level of growth that is constantly required in any industry that you're in. I remember when this lockdown started, Anshika, we were discussing like how to sort of push ourselves. We were thinking about courses, we were thinking of certification. And there's a lot
Yeah.
when you're wanting to be a thought leader, because our industry is such an ever evolving industry. If you look at it, there's constantly someone who's doing something out of the box. And unless you actually sort of learn, it might not be like a proper certification, might be something to do with just having a proper discussion with someone, like what we do. We brainstorm a lot in our group. We push ideas, we pitch stuff. We're not afraid that, oh, this person is going to steal my idea. No. What we want is at the end of the day to come up with ideas that can help others in the industry as well. So when it does, I think it's important to for one's own growth to learn to sort of adapt and to sort of take in everything you possibly can so that you can actually have, for example, for me, ageism was only about younger people. But it's only when I started speaking to you guys, when you started telling me about, oh, it is also faced by the other side of the spectrum as well. But I was like, oh yeah, it actually does. So that's when you start to open your horizon and you start to like take in things and they start to become your new reality in a way. So for me, it's always been about more discussions, more courses, more education, more knowledge, because at the end of the day, it's all about, moving.
Yeah, and this question reminds me of a beautiful quote, which I read some time back. Leadership is not a position or a title. It is an action and example. So your action and your example makes you a good leader. So I can easily say that I can be a very very good leader at the age of 25. But if I don't, if my actions or examples are not healthy and not not something like which anyone else can follow, I will always be a manager till the time I retire. I will always be a manager, but not a good leader. But I can always lead a group of people, even if I'm, if I'm 25 or 30. I can lead a bunch of people if I set right examples, and if I set if I give them the right scenarios, right action. So that's very important, so you can be a good leader at any age.
It's such a sad reality, um, but I think we face this at one point or the other where I'm not going to say just women face it. No, absolutely not. Women do face it. And I think because a lot of my friends are women who have faced this as well, where what we wear gets more attention than what we are actually saying. And that really hurts me sometimes
Yeah.
because I get brushed off sometimes when I'm speaking, or I'm not considered to be at par with the men, or they might just have their own little group. But it's always an extra push that we have to give ourselves to be heard. And I think Kshitij's point was absolutely spot on, where he said, you can either be a manager or you can either be a leader. And you don't have to be a manager to be able to lead. I think just by your actions, just by your sheer actions and sheer sort of devotion to your team, where what you want is still the betterment of the team, and eventually, because I'm not a manager, but I'm still currently leading my team.
Yeah, yeah, that makes for a good food for thought for all of us, because you're absolutely right. There are startling differences between being a manager and a leader, and unfortunately, a lot of people I have met, again, not from our age group, do not understand that bias. And of course, we are not age hating anyone, but we can only talk about experiences around us. And something I would like to share on that thought would be that, in my opinion, if you're headed on a path of being a leader, and again, it's not decided by your designation, by your role, not at all. In fact, I'm certified in leadership. So I've read so much on leadership just to understand that it does not happen with your designation. It's a lifestyle change. It's something that, you can do at any position just by giving others the power to impact everyone around them. In my opinion, that's how leadership is. And if upskilling yourself and making sure people are up to date with their own sense is different from leadership, I don't quite agree with it. I do feel that you have to adapt your micro skills all the time, not only to attain adaptability in a professional space, but just to reach the best version of yourself, right? Even if you don't want to tomorrow align your professional goals with what you personally feel, but you should keep learning skills to just be more relevant and dynamic. And that goes back to Kshitij's point of being adaptable to the current situation. And in my opinion, good leaders do that all the time. You hear or you read about any top leader today, the one thing they're constantly trying to do is improve themselves. And for example, what I've been doing during lockdown, I've been trying to do all these courses and read about things which are in fact 90% not related to my job. This is something around Buddhism or psychology or well-being, and this is not only for the job. And that's what I want to tell every young person listening this podcast, that all we're trying to say is upskilling yourself will go a long way, and not only do a lot of wonders for your professional growth. And I think that's where all of us will agree as well. Now, coming towards the last thought that I constantly keep thinking, this is something that was written by a freelancer a couple of years ago, saying that freelancing, entrepreneurship, remote working opportunities are all ways to avoid age bias if you feel that at work. Now, do you think it's as easy to ignore it by just working around these mechanisms, or do we need like a solid solution to it? Because, he also wrote towards the end that all we care about is the quality of work, and we don't care where you're working from. But again, I think that statement has some juice to sort of, think about.
Well, for me, I remember a lot of my colleagues, especially the ones who are on the higher age spectrum, like not too high, probably in their 30s or 40s, when they started working from home, they had a tough time sort of managing the virtual life. Um, and to be honest, I don't like it. I don't like working from home. And I like the office environment. I like where I can actually go into a workspace and see my colleagues. It's a massive morale booster for me to be able to see my colleagues and to work on it face to face. And our industry so largely depends on face-to-face interactions where
Yeah.
you would see some of the people who have been in the industry for, more than 10 years. It is absolutely amazing to actually watch them speak to a student because there's so much you can learn. The moment they stop talking to a student and they switch, it's quite nice to see how they switch and they come to you as when they're talking to you on a personal level. That it's not always about working from home or remote working or just remove the
Yeah.
whole office setup where you think that ageism won't happen. No, that's not the case. We sometimes need a bit of the traditional office to put us all in one room, brainstorm, think about it, think out loud. Sometimes technology makes it difficult for us to connect. And that I've been feeling on a personal level, where you can't seem to interact that well as it would have been if you were face to face. To a student, to a colleague, to a mentor, it's always difficult. But when you're face to face, when you're looking at someone, when you're listening to them speak, when they know that you're heard, I think it's just more impactful.
People fail to understand this, again, a very simple and basic funda. Working remotely or working as a freelancer doesn't give you this privilege to not be a part of this corporate world. You're still a part of this corporate environment. You're still a part of this industry. What I personally feel is, what those guys are losing is, they fail to understand what leadership qualities are, how they can lead a team, how they can be a good manager, how they can set examples. So they don't get that, they don't get those opportunities where they can learn these corporate tactics. Now, talking about the real problem is, this topic, ageism, is in the workplace may not be taken as seriously as racism or sexual discrimination. The thing is, we really need to talk about it, much like we talk about sexism or any other form of discrimination in the corporate environment. The day we start doing it, I think we'll have a solution. And we really need to work in this area, where if someone, a younger blood can have this opportunity, can get this opportunity to share their experiences, and you know a slightly older generation can adapt and can listen to their ideas. Listening is the most beautiful art, and I think most of the people, they don't have this art. So yeah, learn to listen and learn to adapt. That's the thing which you can have in your corporate environment, and you can do wonders with any project, any new thing, if we adapt this thing. Listen to what other people, your colleague, even if even if that particular guy or girl is in their 20s or they're in their 50s, just listen to them, what they're saying. So once you start listening to them, you'll understand their point of view, and you'll have a better perspective of how you can handle your job and make your team successful. So that's very important.
I agree. I agree. That's a very, very big point, and it's very refreshing to hear that, Kshitij, because a lot of people around us who face it, they just feel like it's a very invalidated feeling. They feel like,
Yeah.
okay, it exists everywhere. It's supposed to be everywhere. Let's just accept it. And I think all three of us who are in this panel today, we agree with the fact that it's existence, it's persistent, and if you face it, you should stand up against it. In fact, I'd also like to plug in the fact that your HR in whatever company that you are supportive, and of course, your first point of contact could be anyone you're comfortable to talk to. So, be it your friends or family. But I do feel that if you think it exists and it's really bothering you to the fact that it's affecting your work, please take it up to the HR and don't feel like you're young and you're going to lose your job, and it's invalidated, and you will never face it again if you going to if you're going to continue with it, because just like sexual harassment, for example, it doesn't go away. Ageism is here to
Yeah,
stay. Just have to develop ways to accept it, and
exactly. Yeah.
accept it, deal with it. I think in a way that's mature. That's I also personally feel, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but if there's a there's a situation like this, I am personally always thinking like, let's not just think about me in a position like this. Let's also think that what was the situation before I came, and what is the solution after I go from this particular havoc. Is this problem going to go away when I step out from that situation, or is this still going to persist? Because then you can think of it from a very larger perspective and try and fix it as much as you can. And fixing it can have different sort of interpretations. You can't tell someone to change, be it in their 20s or their 50s, but just adapting, making people sure that you're listening to them, hearing out their views, also making sure that you're trying to trust and give people time and patience, especially at this time. That's very, very important.
Yeah, exactly. And again, listening to you, it reminds me of another beautiful quote, which says that you're never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. So yeah, I mean, like we have to adapt this, this beautiful thing in our life.
Yeah, just before we end, I'd really like you to quickly sort of touch base on what would you tell people, youngsters our age, who are actually going through this bias today at workplace, and how would you recommend them dealing with it?
Don't let it get away. You have to build that habit for yourself and for others to realize that it's wrong. For yourself to speak up when it's wrong, and for others to realize that it's wrong. But it won't happen unless you speak up. So you have to speak up, and you have to make sure that they know that you're here to stay. And that is an advice that I always give to all my peers, that you have to fight. And it's not about age, it's not about, like, currently we're in a situation where there's a pandemic going on. Now more than ever, the few people that actually have a job have to prove themselves that they are indeed worth keeping. And that's when no age barriers is looked at. What they look at is if you're valuable. So you have to make sure that you're always constantly working on your skill sets, proving that you are indeed a valuable asset and that you're replaceable. And I think that comes with no matter what age group you're at, there's always that fire in you that wants to prove yourself. Even if you're 50 wanting to start new, there's a new fire in you to prove yourself. If you're 24 wanting to become a manager, there's a different fire to prove yourself. But that fire needs to emit. It needs to glow in a positive way, where you sort of don't burn other people when you're going ahead, but just pave the way enough for them to walk on and be able to be led by you.
So I think Trisha covered, most important points which I wanted to talk about. But I don't know whether I'm in a position to advise anyone. But with my experience with the kind of organizations I've worked with, I've got a single word advice for both youngsters and for someone who's got a rich experience in a particular industry. This single word, if you can adapt in your daily work routine, is do not disrespect. So disrespect is the word. So yeah, even if you are at a younger age, if you've got experience, do not disrespect the the opinion you get.
I agree. In fact, I also feel like, there are a couple of things I'd like to add because you guys have started to take my brain as well. I do feel that there are a couple of things like if you're sort of entering, say, a new role, of if you're entering a new leadership, something that's new for you, don't be impulsive in thinking or judging someone. And that's also a way of ageism getting to your head in a way that even if it does not exist, sometimes you think it does, and you can misinterpret a situation. So more often than not, I do feel that it's important to look at a situation in a 360 perspective before standing up and using your voice. And second step, of course, is to use your voice. We also have to understand that at any point, if we are uncomfortable, if we are disrespected, as both of you mentioned, the best weapon or the best tool to go forward is to use your voice to either communicate with the colleague that you're uncomfortable with or take it up to a higher level, because you know your worth. And that's what I think all of us keep talking about as well internally, that when you know your worth, you shouldn't settle for less. And that's what we
Yeah.
really strive for, right? And
Exactly.
another thing that I really want to talk about is respecting yourself, because more often than not, when we are stuck in situations like these, we really get tied up in situations like finances, or stuff like a designation or career or going faster in life. But we forget that at the end of the day, we have to look at the person in the mirror and see if they're well taken care of, well respected. And if you feel like you're not doing this to yourself, unfortunately, no one around you will do that, right? So, just winding up today's episode, it's been wonderful to have you both on this platform. I mean, I am really, really close to you guys, and we've shared a lot of personal and professional dilemmas together, and we've helped each other out through this. We really hope everyone listening to the episode today benefit out of this. If you are in a corporate structure or a structured, semi-structured workplace, and you have this problem, which a lot of people do follow a lot of things that we mentioned, and you can reach out to us as well. Our email address will be given in the chat box below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, listen to our podcast that comes out every Sunday. And thank you both.
Thank you
I
for
just
sharing this beautiful platform. And yeah, I mean, like, would love to be a
should
part
have
of
forgot the
any.
routine.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead.
I had to. I had
Uh,
to. You knew it was coming for you. So thanks, Anshika, a lot for inviting me and for letting me speak for an hour. I'm quite surprised that you were still willing to go on.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice from both of you. We're ending on a positive note, and thank you both for coming. Such kind words from both of you. Really blessed myself to have you both, and we'll hopefully have you on many more episodes talking about corporate structures. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. Do check out our podcast that comes out every week. Thank you.